Good. So yesterday we spoke about the birth of Yaakov and Esav, which literally is the birth of the West and the Jews. So we spoke about the people who would end up being considered to be the epitome of what being a Jew is and what being a Roman is. Okay, so as time progressed, okay, so now we're on to, and time moves on after their birth. Okay, so when they were young, nobody really paid much attention to the prophecies because children are so impulsive and so unpredictable that you can't know anything by observing them in a serious way. Okay, and then comes the parting of the ways. So the parting of the ways took place upon Avraham's death. Okay, so I want to make a fairly major digression and talk about ritualization around death and what death actually means, and then we're going to go back to what happened when Avraham died. Why do you think people have to die? God could do whatever he wants. Okay, make space for more people, but we could, let's say, in theory, inhabit new planets. Okay, why do you think people die? Would you like to live 5,000 years? Philippa says no. Okay. So the idea is that each person has a specific task to fulfill that we instinctively know. We're given enough time, enough physical and emotional capacity to fulfill what we're meant to do. So because of this, past a certain point, age becomes a burden. Could you see where this is so? So when the world was relatively young, people had much longer lifespans because they had bigger tasks and more capacity to do them. So you're given the amount of time that you need. However, and this is a big however, you have to understand the preciousness of life. So if you were to look at nature, you would say, for instance, this marker, is it alive or isn't it alive?
It's alive and there's probably carbon.
Okay, there's carbon in it. If you were to look at it, well, we don't have a microscope that could do it yet, but we will. You'd be able to see all of the microbes having fun in there, yeah? The subatomic particles, okay, whatever, in no discernible pattern, which is what makes subatomic particles so interesting. Okay, so there's movement, but we can't see it. Why can't we see it? What's the physical reason we can't see it? It's too dense, okay, but it's alive. But we call this a very degraded level of life because it has no choices or possibilities, right? So compare this to a tulip. A tulip could do much more than this. What could a tulip do that a marker can't do? Grow. What else? Flourish, meaning reproduce. Huh? Photosynthesis, chloroform. You've heard this class, okay?
No.
You knew it, okay, good.
No, it has nothing to do.
Okay, fine. You're right, it could photosynthesize. Anything else? Okay. There's primitive communication. I don't know if you know this, okay? Okay, so it's more alive than the tulip. Could you see where each thing in a certain sense is more alive? Now humans are even more alive than dolphins. What could Philippa, I'm picking you today, I don't know why. What could Philippa do that a dolphin can't do? You could think more deeply. Anything else? Philippa and a thoughtful dolphin, are they exactly the same? No? You're all saying no, but you can't think of any concrete ways. I mean, she's our classmate. We like her. How is she different than a dolphin? She could walk. She could talk. Thank you. Make decisions, fantasize, be creative, be artistic, have aesthetic sensitivities. Anything else? She has a soul. She has deep relationships to God, to people, which a dolphin, trust me, I mean, would you want to marry a dolphin? No. Okay, whatever. Okay, there's a diminishment of depth there. Okay, she can make moral choices, right? Okay, so a person is much more alive. So we're defining being alive as having possibilities. So some people are more alive than others. Could you see where this is so? Some people are barely alive, not just because of physical disability, but they've been living the same day again and again for 60 years. They're not too imaginative or too deep. They barely talk to any. Are there people like this?
Yes.
Okay, and there are people who are very alive. They keep on planning new things, better things, higher things, more, right? Okay. So only Hashem is absolutely alive, meaning has no limit to his possibilities. This is why he's called the God of life. So death, when a person dies, all the possibilities shut down. Everything we just said, imagination, creativity, moral choosing, soul, speech, deep relationships, it's all closed down. Even what a dolphin does is closed down. Even what a tulip does is closed down. Even, okay, you understand that it's all closed down. So death is considered to be the ultimate blockage. Okay, so the word for blockage in this sense in Judaic language is tuma, which means defilement. So it's not that the dead person is evil, they're a person, but they're defiled, meaning all of their potentials have been robbed by the forces of death. This is clear? So this is why there's mourning from a Jewish perspective, because there's something really lost. So the person's body is no longer them. All of their possibilities are lost. This makes sense to you? So here's basically how death is ritualized. So let's start when you know a person is likely to die, when they're dying. So not supposed to be left alone, because the soul is still very aware of what's going on. Okay, when they die, before death, you're supposed to, if at all possible, say Shema with them, close their eyes, cover their face. Why do you think, and this is done in other cultures as well, why do you think people instinctively cover the face of the dead? It's respect, because they don't look like themselves anymore. You understand this? All of the vitality and choice-making and possibility is visibly gone. Okay, clear? Okay, the next thing. So the next thing in Jewish ritual, when at all possible, the body is taken from where the death took place and is washed and clothed in special clothing that are called tachrichin, which are shrouds. What's the difference? Why do we do this? Other people just are not that concerned with the body. Why are we concerned with the body? So the lowest level of the neshama still has a relationship to the body. But besides that, the body gave them definition and expressed their possibilities. Without a body, a soul has no way of expressing itself. The body is holy. So therefore, a dead body is meant to be treated respectfully. Therefore, a man's body would be washed by men, a woman's body by women. Okay, clear? Okay, then the next thing that happens is, again, where at all possible, the body is taken to where eulogies will be held. Do you know what a eulogy is? Okay, so it's speeches about a dead person. So sometimes it's a funeral home, sometimes it's the person's own home. Okay, what's the purpose of all of this speaking? What's it for? It's for the sake of the living. Now that this person has shut down, saying, and what made them precious? What made their life significant? It's to teach the living what makes life significant. How many of you have been to funerals? Okay, so do they have speaking where you went? So what are the kind of things that people say? Their accomplishments, anything else? Nice things about them, how beloved they were. So this is supposed to teach the living that what counts is your accomplishment, how beloved you are, who you are to other people. What doesn't count? What won't you hear at a funeral? You won't hear bad things. You won't hear how much money they made. Okay, you won't hear how they stayed size 2. Okay, this. And in fact, in her final illness, she was even smaller. Okay, whatever. Okay, you don't hear this stuff. Why do you think you don't? Because at that point, our gut tells us that's not important. So going to a funeral is an important mitzvah. Okay, it also comforts the mourners. It makes the dead person seem still part of their lives through the memory. Okay, so now we get to the part that's relevant to our parsha. When the mourners come home from the funeral, there are supposed to be people waiting for them with a meal. Why do you think that's the case? So it could be a bagel, it could be lentils, it could be eggs. Okay, clear? What? Cakes. A cake could be round, anything round. Why do you think in all communities, whatever they bring, most Ashkenazim bring eggs, okay, why do people bring things that are round? It's to symbolize that life is an endless cycle. So the person is physically closed down and gone, But spiritually, their soul isn't gone. It didn't disappear. This is clear? Okay. So this takes us to our Parsha. Avraham died. Okay. Somebody has to make food for the mourners upon their return from the funeral. Who's making food? Yaakov is making food. The food that he's making is lentil soup. Lentil beans are round. Okay, and indeed in the Sephardi communities, this is usually what they make. Okay, so he's making soup. Esav comes in. He comes in before the members of the funeral arrive. Where was he? So there are different responses that people have to death. Okay, so Yaakov's response was taking care of the mourners. Think about different cultures that you may have known, like Irish people. What do they do at a death? Do you know? They throw a party, which is called a wake. You're familiar with this? No? Okay, so they throw a party, it's called a wake, and what do people do at a wake? They drink and carouse. And why do you think they do this? To celebrate what? The life of the person, to sort of forget their loss, and to go into the headset of, well, you live and then you die, and the main thing is to have a good time. Okay, clear? This is what Esav was doing. It says he was carousing, he was womanizing, he ended up in a violent situation with someone. Okay, he served idols. He totally broke away from any sense of restraint or tradition he had. Now, I want you to hear the next lines because the way the lines are stated are very important. Esav says, pour me out some of the soup before I die because I'm tired. Now, what would you have expected him to say? Not because I'm tired, but because I'm hungry. So Rashi adds, I'm tired of the life I'm leading. I'm tired of it. So when people carouse, do they come soul weary? You've done it. You've been with this one and with that one, and it's late, and your head hurts, and you're tired of it. You understand this? So this kind of spirit weariness is what Esav is saying. So instead of saying, I should do tshuva, I want to return, I want to seek meaning, he wants to drown it in this case, eating soup. You understand this? So he's sick of escaping, and where he's going to is further escape. Do people do this all the time? So I want you to picture someone in today's world who suffers a loss. And they don't want to deal with it. So they turn on TV. Okay, could you picture this? And then when they're sick of watching TV, they turn it off and they say, what? I'm going to eat something. You understand this head? Okay, so this is the opposite of everything the traditional Jewish view of what death and mourning is about is. You're supposed to learn something from the frailty and brevity of life. You're supposed to learn something from the example of the person who died. You're not supposed to bury it. Okay, this is clear? Okay, so he's demanding soup, and he says he's going to die if he doesn't have it. So then Yaakov comes up with something very, very strange. So I'll give you the soup, but you have to sell me the right of being firstborn. What's difficult about this? What's hard to understand here? First of all, what is the right of being firstborn? You don't have enough information. And the next, let's pretend you understand it. Okay, how could you sell being firstborn? Suppose I would say it's worth me $50,000 to pay. I'll pay you that I could be your sister. No matter what I pay you, will I ever be your sister? No. So you're either firstborn or you're not firstborn. It's not negotiable. Okay? And another reason is you would think if Yaakov is a nice person, if somebody says, give me soup, I'm dying, what do? Give them soup. It's soup. They're not like, what are they asking for already? Okay, so those are questions. So first let's look at what the right of firstborn is and why. The firstborn makes the parents into parents. So that changes their relationship to everything. So being a parent puts you in the frame of life of being a builder. Until you're a parent, you're basically focused on who? Yourself. So you're building your own tower. You're deciding who you should be. When you're a parent, in addition to still building yourself, you're building somebody else. So this is why parenting is considered to be like the ultimate creative act in Judaism. So the person, let's say, paints a painting. It was a terrible sentence. Somebody paints a piece of art, okay? So they're creative, something of their soul is on the canvas. Is that true? But the canvas is independent of them immediately. If the artist dies, the canvas still continues, right? The artist is also independent of the canvas. If the canvas disappears, the artist is still alive. So the bond isn't that real. It is a bond, but it's not that real. You understand this? The bond of a parent and child is far deeper. Meaning a child could never, you can't divorce a child can't divorce a parent. You could wish you could divorce your parents or your child, but it can't happen. Why can't it happen? Because every cell of your body is imprinted with them, okay? So you could say, I don't want to be your child any longer. You could run away from the house. You could change your name, do plastic surgery, live in a different continent. But the bottom line is every cell of your body bears your parent's imprint. The same thing holds. A parent could disown their child, could stop answering his letters, could disappear, but they're still the parent. I once actually had a student, it was such a tragic situation. A woman in her 50s came to study in Neve, very bright woman, wealthy. When she was young, for all sorts of reasonably understandable causes, she stopped having a relationship with her parents. So here she is in her 50s. She doesn't know if they're alive or dead. She doesn't know where they live anymore. They don't live where they lived formerly. Okay, it's quite tragic. Could you see this? Okay, so when a child makes somebody into a parent, another level of bonding takes place. So there's the biological bond that's immutable, but there's also this that a parent, by the nature of things, wants to see their higher self in their child. That makes sense? This is especially true with the first child. So a first child is the experiment. Could you see this? Okay. How many of you are first children? Okay. Were there subsequent children, or you were enough? What? You were enough. What? Kept on trying to repeat you unsuccessfully. You have sibs? You have siblings? Yeah. They tried again. They wanted more. Yeah? More. You, Alyssa? No? Okay. A middle child. Two middle children sing with each other. Okay, whatever. Okay, so a first-born child then has two distinguishing factors. One is that they're the child of experimentation. And the other is they're also the initial vehicle of their parents' hopes and aspirations. Yep. Okay, so because of that, a first child is given a double financial portion. So what that means is if, let's say, there are 4 children, the estate is divided into 5 portions. The first child gets 2 and everybody else gets 1.
Really?
Yeah, but, okay, you knew there was a but, didn't you? They have financial responsibility over their siblings until their children, until they get married. Okay, so they're given more, but they're also given responsibility. So they're acting very much in place of a parent. Okay, and in fact, if it's the father who dies, the firstborn child even has responsibility for the mother's financial well-being. Okay, clear? Okay, but there's another side to it. So that's the tangible physical side. That's like biology. But a firstborn, because they're the vehicle of their parents' aspirations, also has the spiritual legacy in a way that the subsequent children don't. So Yaakov sees Esav, who clearly didn't attend the funeral, was busy carousing. He's looking at them and he says, you are going to carry this legacy? You? Would Esav want it? Was he capable of it? No. So he said, yeah, I'll give you soup. You're the kind of person on the day of Avram's funeral, you're carousing and not even there. I'll give you soup. But you give me the legacy. Okay, yeah? So our question is, and indeed, why was he first? That's a good question. So Rashi, rather puzzlingly, says that if you have a glass vial and you put in 2 stones, the one that goes in first comes out last. So they say that Esav was conceived second, and that's why he was born first. But that tells us the fact that he was conceived first, but it still doesn't answer our question that well, because we're generally not too concerned about when people are conceived. Okay, nobody has their conception party, like whatever. So just 9 months ago, okay. So the reason why he was born first, and this is a very big idea, is remember we spoke yesterday about dividing the world? That they both wanted the spiritual and physical worlds? They both wanted all, but what Esav wants first, his primary want is this world. And in order to give himself more pleasure and satisfaction with how he relates to this world, he also wants spiritual meaning. But where he wants to be is right here, feet on the floor. Okay, he wants the world, and therefore he was born into the world first. Yaakov wants this world as a means towards an end, but not as an end in itself. Therefore he was born second. Okay, clear? Now in terms of Esav's potential, he made, by this point in his life, he was only 15, he made bad choices. What do you think the perfected Esav would have been? If he would have made good choices, what would he have been like? He would have been a person who would be very much in the world and very attached to the world, but very focused on where he wants to go with it. So I think I told this to you yesterday. We spoke about David HaMelech yesterday in this regard. You remember it? Yes, no? Okay, so in general, we don't know what people look like in the Torah. So we know that Sarah was beautiful, but beautiful could be tall and thin, beautiful could be short and petite, beautiful could be very fair, beautiful could be dark. We don't know what people look like. Okay, the exception are David and Esav, where we know what they look like. We know that they were both red-headed and ruddy. Okay, so Ramban talks about this, and he says the reason why the people aren't described in the Torah is usually a description is irrelevant. You can't look at somebody and really know who they are. I'm sure you've seen this in life. You've seen people who are very beautiful who are ugly people. You've seen that? You've seen people who are ugly who are beautiful people. So usually you can't tell anything. It's like a mask. But these are the 2 exceptions. They looked like what they were. So they were very ruddy, red-headed, hot-tempered, red skin. So could there be somebody like that who's very calm and very relaxed? Yes, but they weren't. They were like what they looked like. So David HaMelech took his warlike temperament and he used it to fight the good fight, if you know what I mean. So you're all familiar with the story of him doing battle against Goliath, right? So an accountant type wouldn't have done this. Okay, but David was a warrior. His nature, everything about his nature said, you're a warrior. Don't let him get away with this. He's mocking the Jewish people every day. You have to dispose of him. You have to get rid of him. He has to go. He was a warrior. Okay, but it was focused. And later on, when he became the next king without having as yet taken the throne, because Shaul was still reigning, even though the prophet Samuel had told him he's going to reign as king. Shaul became very envious of him and tried to kill him at least on 3 occasions, and David never lifted a hand to him. Now, for a warrior to tolerate that is almost unimaginable. I told you about this in another class. I saw a documentary about murderers. I told you this, no? Well, I saw a documentary about murderers. It was very interesting. So what happened was a psychiatrist and a psychologist, both of whom were connected with Hebrew University, wanted to get murderers to speak about themselves so as better to understand what draws a person into a life of such extreme hostility. So they were very smart. The interviewer who they used was handicapped. He was in a wheelchair. And the effect of that was, of course, that they were much less afraid of him, much more open. So there were 2 murderers. One eventually did sort of tshuva, but the other one was like, he was in jail, I think at the time, 28 years. Nothing about him had changed. So he was in a headset where if somebody offends him in some way, he'll kill them because he doesn't know what else to do with the offense. I have a friend who saw a murder. Okay, she's a woman. She lives in Armon HaNatziv. Do you know where that is? It's in southern Yerushalayim. And she was in a pizza place. So there were two teenage boys there, and they were having a verbal argument. And one of them said to the other one, "Your mother is," and then he said all sorts of vile and terrible things. And the other one took out a knife and killed him. So the man behind the counter, of course, tried to separate them before that could happen, but he didn't succeed. So he called the police. The police came. It was too late when they got there. I mean, they came soon, but it was too late. Now I want you to picture the policeman. Forget about the kids. Just see the policeman. Think Israeli policeman. Around how old are you seeing? Mid-40s. Sephardi or Ashkenaz? Think policeman Sephardi. Okay, so the policeman is a Sephardi Baba, if you know what I mean. This is a Papa. He comes in there, and he looks at it was clear the guy was, the dead one was dead. There was nothing to do. There was no reason to call like the emergency forces. He was dead. But he said, "Don't you know you ruined your own life?" He said this to the murderer. And the boy says back to him, "But what should I have done? He called my mother," and then he repeated all of the curses. He mamish didn't know what to do, like what options did he have? And the policeman was stunned. He didn't know what to say to him. Okay, clear? What was the right answer? What should he have done? Not kill him, but yes, walk away. If he's the kind who can't walk away, say, "Well, your mother is it?" Okay, like your sister and your, whatever. But that's as far as you go. You have to have borders. You have to have a line that you don't cross. That makes sense? So David's line was, if it wasn't to save somebody else, if it wasn't to save someone, my violence has limitations. Okay, clear? Okay, so that's the difference between David and Esav. Esav could have been David if he would have made different choices. He could have been David. So he already made his choices. At the age of 15, he already made his choices. And Yaakov saw it. Yaakov could see the person who Esav had become, so he said, "You cannot get the spiritual legacy." And Esav agreed. And I want you to hear the words of the text. I don't usually make you hear the words of the text, but this time it's so important for you to grasp what's going on. Hold on. So Esav says, "Hine anochi holech lamut, v'lama li b'chora." Behold, I'm going to die. What do I need the legacy of being firstborn for? Meaning, I'm going to die, everyone's going to die, you're going to die. What do I need the spiritual legacy for? Life is about now. Okay, clear? Vayomer Yaakov said, "Hishba'ali, swear to me, kayom, like the day, v'yishba'lo," and he swore, v'yimkoret b'choroto liYaakov, and he sold his legacy of being firstborn to Yaakov. So why did he make him swear? Because he knew that later he was likely to regret it. V'Yaakov natan le'esav lechem v'nazid adashim. So Yaakov gave Esav bread and this pottage of soup with lentils. V'yachal, and he ate. V'yesht, and he drank. V'yakom, and he got up. V'yelech, and he went away. V'yivaz, and he shamed. Esav et ha-bechora. Esav did all of this to the bechora. Okay, so there are 5 different expressions. Okay, so notice them again. Listen to what he did. He got up, he ate, he drank, he got up, he went, and he shamed. 5 different things. Kliakar explains them. He says each one of them is telling us something about who Esav was, not just what he did at the moment. He ate. So his eating was the same, reflective of the same motivation that he used when he womanized. He saw a woman the way a hungry man sees a sandwich. She's there for him, for his consumption. And this is sometimes used elsewhere in the Torah. He drank. Okay? So this is parallel to us seeing human life as being irrelevant. This drinking is the kind of drinking that would lead a person even to murder. He got up. He walked away from Hashem. He knew about God. He grew up in Yitzchak's house. He knew Avraham. He was 15 when Avraham died. He wasn't a baby. He knew about God. He walked away from it. Okay? And this word Vayekam is used for other instances of idol worship. Vayelech. And he said, I am going away. Away from what? From belief in anything you stand for. So at that point when he said, I'm going away, it means I don't believe that there's anything to this. My life here is the only life I'll have. There's no revival of the dead. There's no olam haba. And finally, he shamed. What is that? He shamed being anything that was anything other than involved in this world. So this was his response to it. Now suppose he would have responded differently. Suppose he would have eaten the soup and then said, what did I do? I'm crazy. I gave you my legacy as firstborn for soup. I regret this deal. What do you think would happen then? Everything would be different. So his not regretting it, but his justifying himself, had more serious repercussions than the deal itself did. This makes sense to you? Okay, so what happens next? So after this, immediately after this, there's a famine. So the famine is, of course, a major distraction from the facthood of Avram's death, what Esav did. So whenever there's any great natural disaster, what do you think it's for?
A reason.
There's always a reason. What's the basic effect it's supposed to have on you?
Like a wake-up call.
Wake up. What's life about? Your life could have ended in 2 minutes in a tsunami. Your life could end any moment if there's no food. Wake up, question life. So we're going to talk about there being 10 different famines and where they took people to. That's next class.